Welcome to the Team Dive. If you work anywhere today, chances are you're working in a team.
Absolutely.
And that team, well, it's really the core unit of performance now. Teams are uh, more autonomous, more empowered than they've ever been.
hmm And expected to deliver more value, often in these really dynamic collaborative setups.
Exactly. The expectations are just huge.
They are. But, the data tells a bit of a sobering story here. Research actually shows that something like 3 out of every 4 cross-functional teams, they underperform.
3 out of 4.
Wow. Yeah, when you look at key things like efficiency, getting results, the pressure's sky high, but the actual success rate, it's often quite low.
Okay, so that's the big challenge we're really diving into today.
Right.
Our mission is to cut through some of the, let's say, wishful thinking, the myths about team chemistry or finding that one heroic leader who fixes
Or
everything.
the silver bullet idea.
Exactly. Instead, we want to reveal the structural factors, the behavioral factors that hard data actually proves drive team success. We're trying to treat team effectiveness almost like a science, something you can analyze, you can optimize.
Okay, so let's unpack why teams fail so often. Historically, I think when a team does well, we often point to like an amazing leader.
Sure.
And when they fail, we just say, oh, they didn't click, bad chemistry.
That vague chemistry thing.
But maybe the most persistent myth is the top talent one.
Mm.
The idea that if you just stack your team with individual superstars, you're guaranteed to win.
Right. And it sounds logical, but it's surprisingly often not true. Individual performance is, well, it's necessary, obviously. You need capable people.
Of course.
But it's absolutely not sufficient for team success. Team performance is really limited by how those individuals actually interact, how they integrate their work. It's like, having 5 incredible singers versus having a choir that sings together perfectly. Very different things. Can you give us a really concrete example, something memorable, where that failure mode played out?
Oh, definitely. You don't need to look much further than the U.S. men's Olympic 4x100-meter
Yeah.
relay team.
Yes.
I mean, on paper, they consistently have some of the fastest sprinters on the entire planet,
Yeah.
all elite individual performers.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, since around 2008, that team has just been plagued by issues, often underperforming, sometimes getting disqualified.
Disqualified, why?
Often because of something as basic, as procedural, as messing up the baton pass.
That's incredible. Such a fundamental part of that specific team event.
Exactly. They focused so much on having the fastest individual legs that they neglected the teamwork bit, the actual passing of the baton.
So the integration failed.
Precisely. Sometimes last-minute changes to the lineup, maybe not enough practice time together at that specific unit. It just shows that sheer individual talent can't make up for a lack of, well, cohesive teamwork, role clarity, and just plain practice on the interactions.
That really nails why we need a more rigorous definition here. So the research defines team effectiveness as the collective capacity to sustainably deliver results.
That's it, collective capacity.
Yeah.
And sustainable. It's not just about one win, it's building an engine.
Right.
And that capacity, it's built on 17 specific things called health drivers. These are grouped into 4 kind of core areas of team health.
17 drivers.
Okay. Now, what's really crucial here, for you listening, is that these drivers, when you measure them, they explain a huge chunk of the difference between low-performing and high-performing teams.
How much?
We're talking somewhere between 69% and 76% of the variance. That's across outcomes like efficiency, results for stakeholders, and importantly, innovation.
Wow, 69 to 76%.
Right.
That's massive explanatory power. We're not talking small tweaks here.
No, not at all. We're talking about understanding the core components of success.
So what are those 4 core areas? What do they cover?
Okay, let's lay them out. First up is configuration. This is about the structure. Do you have the right roles, the right mix of skills, personalities, perspectives on the team? Get the configuration wrong, and, well, the whole thing's built on sand.
So the who and the what roles?
Yeah, exactly. Second is alignment. This is making sure everyone's pulling the same way. Are goals clear? Is the vision shared? Is there real commitment?
Makes sense.
Third, execution. This is the how. How well do you actually manage the day-to-day? Tracking progress, coordinating tasks, that kind of thing.
The operational side.
Right. And finally, number 4 is renewal. This is about the long game. Is your team environment set up for learning, for sustainability, continuous improvement? Or are you just going to burn everyone out chasing one target?
It sounds like a really complete life cycle model for how a team functions.
Okay, so we've got the foundations, but here's where it gets interesting, moving to leverage. You said 17 drivers, but you also mentioned something surprising. Teams don't have to be perfect across all 17. That's right. It's actually a relief. The research found that even the top-performing teams, they were only rated as very good, on average at about 11 out of the 17 behaviors.
Only 11. So you don't need straight A's across the board.
No, you don't. Which means if a team has, limited time, limited energy, limited budget for improvement.
Which most teams do.
Exactly. They need to focus their efforts. And the data shows there are 4 drivers that give the biggest return on that investment, especially for efficiency and innovation.
Okay, the highest leverage points, what are they?
These are the big 4. Trust, communication, innovative thinking, and decision-making. Get these right, or at least significantly better, and you tend to move the needle the most.
Right, let's zoom in on trust first, because that often feels a bit fuzzy, like a general vibe, but the data actually breaks it down.
It does, into 2 really practical types.
Yeah.
First, there's cognitive trust. This is the logical part, the head stuff. It's believing someone is competent, they're reliable, they operate with integrity.
So I trust they know their job and will do what they say.
Exactly. If they say they'll deliver by Friday, you believe they will. Then second, there's affective trust. This is more relational, more from the heart. It's about forming real interpersonal bonds, built on care, connection, mutual respect.
Okay, so cognitive trust is, I trust your skills. Affective trust is, I trust you as a person. I feel safe with you.
You've got it.
Yeah.
And the impact when both types of trust are high, it's huge. Teams scoring high on overall trust were found to be 3.3 times more efficient.
3 times more efficient.
And 5.1 times more likely to produce those high-quality results for stakeholders.
Okay, but hang on. Let's push on that affective trust bit. In a really professional, maybe sharp-elbowed environment, isn't there a risk? If I share something vulnerable, a personal story, couldn't that actually undermine my cognitive trust, make people think I'm less competent?
That is a really critical question. And it's often why leaders, especially, resist showing that vulnerability. They worry it looks weak.
Right.
However, the data and some powerful anecdotes suggest the opposite often happens. Demonstrating vulnerability, especially from a leader, tends to build trust rather than break it down because it shows authenticity. It makes you human.
Is there an example of that?
Yeah, there's a great story about a leadership team in a Middle Eastern company. They decided to hold this storytelling dinner. Everyone had to share a pivotal life story.
Okay, that sounds potentially awkward.
Could be. But one senior leader who was generally seen as, brilliant, sharp, maybe a bit cold and uncaring.
We all know that type.
Right. He shared this really personal story about a significant hardship from his childhood, something quite vulnerable.
And how did people react?
It completely changed the dynamic. His vulnerability allowed his colleagues to see him not just as this super smart executive tool, but as a whole person.
It built that affective trust.
Massively. And that single act, that sharing, it fundamentally improved their ability to handle tough conversations and conflicts later on. Because now they knew, deep down, that he wasn't just about the bottom line. There was a person there who cared.
That's a powerful shift, moving from just transaction to actual relationship. Okay, let's talk about the 4th big driver, decision-making. Why is that one so crucial, especially for innovation?
Yeah, decision-making is really key for driving innovation, where you often need speed and agility. Teams that scored high on this driver were 2.8 times more innovative than the others.
2.8 times. Okay, so where do teams usually mess this up?
The most common failure point is simply role confusion. Who actually gets to decide? Who's just offering advice? Who needs to be informed? Who executes? Without clarity, decisions stall or the wrong people make them.
So how do you create that clarity? Is there a tool or a method?
One really effective approach highlighted in the research is using a framework. A popular one is the DARE model.
DARE. What does that stand for?
Deciders, advisors, recommenders, and executors. It basically forces you to explicitly map out who plays which role for a specific decision.
Okay, I see the roles. Decider, advisor, recommender, executor. But wait, how does advisor differ from recommender? And isn't the CEO always the decider?
Not necessarily. And that's kind of the beauty of using a clear framework like DARE. The decider is the one with the final yes or no. The recommender might propose the course of action based on analysis. The advisor provides expert input or strategic context, maybe challenges assumptions.
Ah, okay.
And there's this case study of a North American health insurance company. They used the DARE model for a big strategic funding decision. And when they actually mapped it out, They had this huge aha moment.
What did they realize?
They realized the CEO wasn't the natural decider for this particular allocation. It really should have been a specific portfolio manager who had the deeper context.
Wow, that changes the power dynamic immediately. Did it uncover anything else?
Yes, something even more critical, perhaps. They realized that several key people, the ones who would actually have to execute the plan or whose teams would be most impacted, the recommenders from the ground level, they weren't even involved in the main decision-making loop.
So they were missing crucial voices.
Totally. The DEAR exercise didn't just clarify roles for those in the room, it showed them who was missing from the room entirely. And they fixed that right away.
Those blind spots are really fascinating, and it leads us straight into another myth you wanted to bust. The idea that teams just sort of know what they need to work on. They don't, right?
No, generally they don't. Teams often have these profound shared blind spots. They focus their energy and attention in the wrong places.
How does that show up?
Well, the research found that when teams are asked to self-prioritize where they need to improve, they consistently rank trust and communication really highly, which, is good. Those are important.
Right.
But they rank innovative thinking and decision-making much, much lower down the list of priorities.
But wait, based on the data you just shared, those last two, innovative thinking and decision-making, are actually the super high-impact drivers for performance and results.
Exactly. So the team thinks they should work on, say, communication, which maybe they're already okay at.
Right.
Or they might even mistakenly think their decision-making is fine when actually it's a major bottleneck.
So their improvement efforts are basically misplaced. They're working hard on the wrong things.
Precisely. Without some kind of objective diagnostic, like the tools used in this research, teams risk spinning their wheels, focusing on behaviors that won't actually move the needle much.
Which really underscores your point that there's no one-size-fits-all playbook here. The right approach has to depend on the team's context. And you said the critical factor defining that context is interdependence.
Yes, interdependence is key. It basically dictates the rules of the game for how the team needs to operate. We break it down into two types.
Okay.
First is outcome interdependence. This asks, do the team members sink or swim together? Is their success fundamentally tied to a shared result?
So is it a collective win or loss?
Exactly. The second type is task interdependence. This is about the how. How much do team members need to coordinate their specific tasks and workflows on a daily or even hourly basis? How much does my work directly impact yours right now?
Okay, outcome and task interdependence. Why does making that distinction matter so much?
Because it fundamentally changes what behaviors are most critical. If a team needs really high task coordination, like passing work back and forth constantly, but they think they can just succeed individually, they won't invest enough time in things like detailed role clarity or constant communication. They'll drop the baton, basically.
Metaphorically speaking.
Right. And here's the kicker statistic that shows just how big this disconnect is. The research found that 54% of teams actually disagree amongst themselves about their own interdependence characteristics.
Wait, over half the teams don't even agree on how interconnected they are.
Exactly. More than half the teams might have members who think they're playing basketball while others think they're playing tennis. They fundamentally misunderstand the rules of how they need to work together and how their success is actually measured. So, to help teams get a handle on this, the research uses these helpful archetypes. 3 main types, based on those interdependence levels, using sports analogies.
Okay, analogies are good. Let's start with the one that needs the least coordination.
Right, that's the cycling team archetype. This is low task interdependence and low outcome interdependence.
Like cyclists in a road race who are technically a team but mostly race individually?
Kind of, yeah. Or think of maybe a traditional recruiting team or a field sales team. Each member might handle their own clients, their own candidates, their own territory. They can achieve individual success, hit their quota, make their hires, even if a teammate doesn't.
So my success isn't directly tied to yours task by task, or for the overall result?
Largely, yes. For these cycling teams, focusing on improving those big 4 drivers we talked about, trust, communication, decision-making, innovative thinking, that's generally enough to make them perform significantly better.
Okay, makes sense. What's the next level up in coordination?
That would be the relay team. This is high task interdependence, but still potentially low outcome interdependence.
High task, low outcome, like the actual relay race.
Exactly like the relay race. An agile software development team is a perfect business example. They have to collaborate constantly. Passing code, doing reviews, integrating features. My work directly enables or blocks your next step.
Right, the baton pass again.
Precisely. If one developer introduces a bug or misses a deadline, it directly impacts the workflow of everyone else downstream, even if maybe the whole project eventually gets finished somehow.
So individual errors really slow down the whole chain.
They do. So for these relay teams, the higher performers put extra emphasis on different drivers: goals, commitment, and recognition. You need super clear goals everyone buys into, strong commitment to the shared process, and recognition for making that process work smoothly. Alignment is critical.
Got it. Goals, commitment, recognition for the relay team, and the final archetype, the most interconnected.
That's the rowing team. High task interdependence and high outcome interdependence. Everyone has to pull together, perfectly synchronized, for the boat to even move forward, let alone win.
Obvious example is an actual rowing crew. What about in business?
Think of a surgical team in an operating room, or a fighter pilot crew, maybe an emergency response unit arriving at a scene. Success is totally dependent on flawless, real-time coordination.
And failure is collective and often high stakes.
Absolutely. The failure of one member usually means the failure of the entire mission or outcome. So because that tight integration is everything, the highest performing rowing teams focus intensely on belonging and role definition.
Belonging and role definition. Why those?
Everyone needs to know their exact role second by second, almost instinctively. And that sense of belonging, that psychological safety within the unit, allows them to function seamlessly as this single, integrated entity, especially under intense pressure. You trust the person next to you implicitly.
Okay, we've covered the science, debunked some myths, and understood how context, specifically interdependence, shapes what matters. So for you listening now, wanting to improve your own team, what are the concrete, actionable steps organizations should take? How do you build these healthier, science-backed teams?
Well, the first step, and it's really non-negotiable, is you have to take a hard look. You need to use proper diagnostics, quantitative tools, surveys, assessments. Get a real baseline.
No guessing.
No guessing. Where's the team actually doing well across those 17 drivers, and where are the biggest gaps, the areas needing the most urgent, high-leverage improvement?
And just getting the data isn't enough, right?
Not at all. Critically, this whole process relies on building personal self-awareness within the team members. Things like 360-degree feedback, maybe targeted coaching. Because, let's face it, ingrained habits, those patterns of behavior, they won't change if the individuals involved don't even recognize them in the first place.
Okay, so get the data, build self-awareness. But then there's step 2, which feels like where many efforts fall apart. People go to the workshop, they feel inspired.
The workshop high.
Right. And then 2 months later, everyone slipped back into the old ways. How do you make sure changes stick?
Sustainability. That requires building in some structure, governance, process controls. And honestly, one of the simplest but most effective tools is just holding regular, structured, retrospective check-ins.
Like agile retrospectives.
Similar idea, but maybe broader. Not just talking about what the results, but crucially talking about the how. How are we working together? What behavioral changes did we agree to try? Are they working? What still needs adjustment?
So deliberately reflecting on the team process itself.
Regularly. The more often teams pause to consciously reflect on how they interact, the more likely those new, better behaviors start to become the default, the ingrained habit.
Let's connect this back to leadership. We mentioned earlier that leaders often have this rosier view. They think the team's doing better than the members do. What if the leader is actually the one blocking the change, maybe unintentionally?
Yeah, that leader perception gap is a huge potential roadblock. You're right. Leaders often need specific coaching to shift away from maybe a more traditional command and control style
Right.
towards being more collaborative, more data-driven, more open to what the diagnostics are saying. This might mean dedicated interventions just for the leaders, workshops designed specifically to help them see their own blind spots and become more open to vulnerability and leading the change.
Okay, so you address the leader gap. Now, let's say an organization pilots this, they work with a few key teams, they see great results. How do they scale this kind of systemic change across maybe hundreds of teams?
Right? Scaling is the ultimate goal for big impact. At that point, you really have to move beyond relying only on external experts or consultants. You need to embed this capability within the organization. Make team effectiveness part of the company's DNA.
How do you do that practically?
A really effective way is the train-the-trainer approach. We saw this work incredibly well at a large Asian bank mentioned in the research. They wanted to scale this to over 200 teams.
Wow, 200 teams.
Yeah. So they had their internal HR business partners first experience the diagnostic and team sessions themselves. Then they shadow the expert facilitators. Then they started co-leading sessions. And eventually, after getting certified, they could facilitate the entire program independently.
So they built internal capacity.
Exactly. That internal ownership, having your own people who understand the culture and can champion and deliver this, that's what makes the change truly sustainable and scalable across the whole organization. Hashtag tag outro.
This has been a fantastic deep dive, really illuminating the science behind teamwork. I think the core takeaway for me is shifting away from just relying on gut feel or leadership intuition, and instead prioritizing those evidence-based behaviors like the big four you mentioned: trust, communication, innovative thinking, decision-making, and crucially, tailoring the approach based on the team's actual structure, its interdependence.
Absolutely. And for you listening, if you can identify those shared blind spots your team might have and get clarity on your team's archetype, are you a cycling, relay, or rowing team, then you can really focus your improvement efforts on the things that will actually create value. No more wasted effort.
So here's a final thought for you to consider as you reflect on your own team.
Oh.
We heard how critical clear roles are, especially for those highly integrated rowing teams.
Absolutely vital.
But if the research shows that over half, 54% of all teams, can't even agree on their basic level of interdependence, whether they need high task coordination or if their outcomes are linked, then how effectively can they really define those critical roles? If you don't even agree on the fundamental nature of the game you're playing together, how can you possibly agree on the positions? It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are most teams out there operating without even having agreed on the basic rules of engagement?
A provocative question indeed.
We'll leave you with that thought. Thanks for joining us for the Deep Dive.